me, lady. Yeah, I'm kind of obsessed with charity shops, so... Welcome back to my channel. My name is Mouse. I'm your fun-size pop angel and producer princess. You can see we've got a little bit of evolution here. I thought this was maybe a better angle for you. Let me know what you think. And also I can be really casual like this. Anyway, I had one of you lovely people commenting on my Pity Sex breakdown, asking for the drums in more depth. So, if you ask, I provide. You know how it works. Here it is. And also, before I show you, if there's anything that you think you've seen on my channel that you're interested in and you want me to talk a little bit more about, I'm totally happy to do it, so just let me know. I got you. Anyway, before I continue blethering on, here are the drums of Pity Sex in more depth. Welcome back to the project for Pity Sex. So we're looking at just the drums today. Before we get into it, drum bus compression that's happening here. Let's take a look at this compression. So this is actually a preset on the Waves H-Comp. I don't use this compressor, to be honest, on a single instrument very frequently, but I do like it on a group of instruments if they're all compressed together, and I really like this preset. So let's go through each and see what's happening. I'm also going to go through section by section too. Let's take a look at the rest of the mixer as well. And we do have some pretty interesting things going on here. So for example, I'm just looking at this snare and we have a vocal transformer. So that is a Foreman shift. That's Logic stock Foreman shift. You know, you might not typically think to put that on a snare, but I have done for this example to achieve that sound there. So let's just take the verse and see what's happening. So as you can see, from section 1 to section 2 of verse 1, the only thing that's actually being added is this hi-hat loop. And this is just a cymatics one, so it's free. Nothing too crazy. I've just time stretched it because of course it's 150 BPM and my track's at 100. And we also have this slightly different fill as well. Now this is actually one that Mun Sing put in, and this is Mun Sing snare and also kick as well. So this is what I started off with from him. And obviously this is like super early version of this track. So, you know, this was never his intention of the final sound. You can hear actually that even within these samples that he's included, there's actually quite a lot going on. So let's just have a look. Although that is a kick, there is also on top of it some high frequency information as well. So what I've done is I've combined it with this kick here. But I have processed it in a quite an interesting way. So I'm going to take all the processing off, and this is the kick that I started out with. Gosh, it's so different, isn't it? Nothing wrong with it. But I've got an interesting EQ. This is actually, again, a preset, just hi-fi drums preset. And this is the thing that takes it to the next level. It's a clip distortion. What I really like about the clip distortion is that it changes quite a lot of the tone of the kick. And then I have a reverb. But let's combine those. We also have the snare, and the snare in this part sounds like this. I love it so much when I forget what I've done and I come back to a project and I take all the processing off and I'm like, whoa, is that what I started with? Yeah, so this is the sound that I started off with. And I believe this is a Sophie, yeah, it's from the Sophie sample pack available on Splice. And then I've just added a Foreman shift, just down a little bit. I'm a sucker for a interesting snare, and then a reverb too. Couple that with the click snare that Mun Sing added. And that loop has been processed quite simply as well. It's just got a compression on it and also CLA Drums. Now this is quite an interesting plugin. I really like CLA Drums. And to be honest, a few years ago, I would have said that's really not a good thing to use. It's a bit of a one-stop shop. Actually, it's really powerful and I do love it. So all that's doing is adding some EQ and also a little bit of reverb as well, but not as much reverb as it's on the other snare. And then we have the loops, which I have compressed, and then compressed, of course, all together once more in my drum bus. Come over to the pre-chorus now. So this totally changes the feel of the whole song, this section. Let's have a look at the kick. It's the same sound as before. No change in processing. Same there as well. However, I add another kick, and to be honest, I think this is overkill. I don't think anyone can hear this. I think I'm literally the only person that knows it exists, but whatever. So all I have done is I've changed the sample but kept the processing the same to give it a sort of a kind of automated feel. I'll explain what I mean by that in just a second, but yeah, I don't think this bit is necessary, to be honest. I just thought it added even more movement because I'm really afraid that my retention would be weak in any of my songs, and that is not what I want as a pop artist. So let's just have a look at these samples without all the processing. So that's what they sound like. I've added this EQ, which is the same Hi-Fi Drums EQ. Again, stock preset. I then added a short gated reverb with Space Designer. And then an AutoFilter, which is doing all the heavy lifting. Kind of makes them sound a little bit spongy, but these are the settings that I have on my filter. Then we come on to the snares, and here is the first introduction of some new snare sounds. This is a completely unedited sample, which I believe again is from the Sophie sample pack. So we're kind of getting this different rhythm now, and it's just driving this pre-chorus on. When I was writing this song, I kind of thought I'd have half this length of a pre-chorus, so it's really important for me that that chorus was coming. And this is a sample which Mun Sing provided, and I do believe that in our original version that this was actually in the pre-chorus too, and it's this just a finger snap, really simple. Compressor and CLA Drums. Again, light EQ and a reverb as well, and a little bit more compression actually too. And then we also have this other pre-chorus snare. Quite weird, to be honest with you, and once more clip distortion. I believe I just copied and pasted the exact processing from that kick. Yeah, with this Taylor Femme demonstration. H-Reverb, Waves H-Reverb. Not sure I actually even like this sound, but I think it's quite cool. So this is how it started. And it is a sound, again, from the Sophie sample pack, EQ, clip distortion, H-Reverb. Another fill at the end. And then we're on to the chorus, and this is where things get a little more tasty. There we go. So let's take a listen to these sounds. So this is the first time that we hear this, what I've described as 80s kick. So let's take a listen. Sounds okay. Compressor. Nice bit of warm overdrive. There's my settings. Bit crusher. Having said that though, that is not doing anything at all, is it? Classic. Anyway, a little bit of tape delay, which is not doing anything at all. Why on earth have I got that? Who knows? And then at the end, a little bit of EQ, just taking off the very low and very high end. Something that's really important in drum programming is playing with velocities, so making sure that the velocities are not just exactly the same all the way throughout. And then this kick as well, and this is the same kick that Mun Sing gave me all together. Then we are back to using the verse snare. Sounds like this. This is the one, of course, with that formant shift on it, with those loops as well. Slightly different fill at the end. And then we have what's giving it the extra spice. So this is a Cymatics hi-hat loop. And I haven't processed this at all, and you can hear that it is slowed down considerably. But actually I quite like the almost washy sound. And then we have this beat, and this is like one of my favourite Apple loops. I've EQ'd it, so we're just getting what's in the middle here. Like that. But this is what it sounds like full. And then I have this hi-hat loop. Between that section and the next part of the chorus, the only thing that changes is I have a slightly different hi-hat loop. And that is exactly the same between chorus A and chorus B, or chorus and post-chorus. Now, in terms of the MIDI and velocities, let's take a look. Where it really gets interesting is the chorus and the post-chorus, which is pretty much the same, particularly in the kick. Now, I love programming a number of different kicks at once in the same track. I think that sounds really cool. It has a lot of motion, a lot of movement, a lot of momentum. So let's take a look at what's going on. So we've got the 80s kick, and you can see here already we're getting into something a little bit more interesting. So what I've recently learnt to do, and it seems like an absolute no-brainer now I think about it, but I certainly didn't do this when I was originally, starting to learn to program drums and make my own beats, is when we have this sort of double kick here in the lead up to this first beat of the bar kick, we want this first beat of the bar to be impactful, sturdy, something that I guess the listener can rely on as being repetitive throughout the beat, right? We want our listener to find the beat, latch onto it, and know when it's coming. Of course, I'm talking in particular about pop music here. This can change. This is just the way that I approach pop music, but it doesn't have to be the case between genre to genre. But yes, I used to be a drummer myself. I had a double kick pedal because I just, if you know me already, you'll know that I'm obsessed with Avenged Sevenfold, and I just wanted to be the Rev. So I often think about how I would play a part when I'm writing it. Again, in pop, it doesn't matter too much because nobody is trying to replicate these beats, at least not at this stage anyway. But I did often think about when I was doing these little double kick fills, I suppose, into the first beat of the next bar, they wouldn't necessarily be the same velocity. And again, humanizing my drums isn't really that important to me, because I don't need to. I'm not trying to replicate music which is going to be played by a live band, or I don't really care, particularly with this song. It's obvious that a live band isn't playing it, and that's fine. That's just the genre style that I'm going for. This is just in one drum part anyway, but you can see how the velocities do add to that movement. And of course you can get a little bit more interesting. For example, I think if I was doing this again, I might make this one slightly higher in velocity than this one. And when you do that, let's just do it as an example. It kind of gives it this kind of like tumbling, like falling over sound. If that doesn't make sense, let me just play it. You see what I mean? It kind of like trips over itself a little bit. Da-da-da. I still wouldn't personally put any of these pre-kicks at a higher velocity than this one. This is where our accent needs to be. The first beat of the bar, as I mentioned earlier, having that sort of, that really catchy beat that your listener can latch onto and rely on throughout the song is really important. Those velocities work really well in tandem with the other kick that we've got going on, which does add a lot more tonal value thanks to that clip, distortion and reverb. So here I have at the bottom, I've gotten both of the velocities up for both tracks. And what I'm also going to do, just as an experiment, is I'm going to mute this 80s kick, which has that slightly more varied velocities in it. And let's play the beat and just see what it sounds like without that. It's okay. It's still a good beat, but let's put it back in. I hope you can kind of feel the change in rhythm there. Not change in rhythm, but how it moves. It just moves better to me. So looking at these velocities at the same time, this is our 80s kick down here, and this is our kick, just as I've labelled them within the project. So there's not much happening in terms of the velocities within the kick. And that's pretty constant throughout that whole channel, actually. And then yes, we just have this 80s kick, which is added for flavour. I think something that's really helped, particularly when it comes to building a more full beat in the chorus, is having these little kind of build-up notes to that accented first beat of the bar, and having another kick which works to accent those main beats. There is, I mean, if we just look at this little intersection before we get to bar 27 though, there is this dissonance, rhythmic dissonance. Is that a thing? Probably not, but I hope it makes sense. I think it does. There is a kind of rhythmic dissonance between these two kicks. So you can see it in the MIDI. You know, you've got this and then you've got this part down here. Does it make sense? I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm still conflicted. Let's have a listen. Now it sounds a little bit like it's tripping over itself, so I certainly wouldn't put that rhythm in a lot throughout this beat, throughout these, this 4-bar section. However, in the context of the whole thing, it sounds good. And a little bit of tripping over itself actually is okay. At least I think I'll get away with it anyway. But of course we have the other kick as well, called kick 2, even though it's the third kick. Whatever, I'm not judging myself for this. And that is the sample that we've heard before. Although we can't see the MIDI information for this, we can tell that by looking at the waves, not much is changing. How they interact with each other is obviously really important. But why I wanted to work with a couple of different kicks and why I enjoy doing that in my beats is because I have one, so this one, which adds a lot of tonal information. This one, which adds a lot of the rhythmic flavour. And then this one, which is it's just an interesting sample because it has such a lot of high end in it as well. It gives me quite a spectrum to play with. It gives me quite a number of different sounds I can take or leave throughout, all of the sections. As we've already come across, this is the first instance that we hear the 80s kick, where we get that different rhythmic element. And that's really cool because it allows you to build up this sort of dynamics within the rhythm. So for example, we have, you can see in just in the regions here that there's so much more going on in the chorus beat that we can kind of build up and then bring it back down again for verse 2 and build up again for the chorus, bring it down to nothing for the middle 8, bring it back up to the chorus. It allows you more options and more in your kind of tool belt, as it were, toolkit to utilize when it comes to building up and taking away. That's how I approach it, and I love having a kick which adds a lot of tone, another kick which does a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the rhythm, and perhaps another tonal kick as well. If I was going to work with a couple of different kicks though, it's really what I really want to make note of is that these are not the same sound. If they are the same sound, that's okay, just make sure they're EQ'd differently, because otherwise you might get things like phase cancellation, and that's a whole other topic. You don't want that. Essentially, if two sounds are played at the same time and they're exactly the same waveform, they will cancel each other out, and you get this really... It can be a cool creative effect, but if you want a beat, nah. And then we have the second verse. Same sounds, nothing new here. And then we come to the pre-chorus, there is nothing new there either. Chorus is exactly the same, middle 8, no drums, chorus, and that's basically it. So yeah, if there's any specific questions you have about anything that I've done here, do let me know. Happy to talk settings, presets, whatever you'd like to know, just drop me a comment. Hope you enjoyed this video, and see you in my next one.